the Jets, 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 are releasing wide receiver Davante Adams. The Jets had reportedly been taking trade calls on Adams recently, but they did not find a suitor. And according to reports, they have released him. This is according to Adam Schefter. And the decision for the Jets is tied to Aaron Rodgers, right? Since Aaron Rodgers is gone, that means Davante Adams is gone, and it's about money, right? If you look at the salary cap, Adams had a $38.2 million cap hit in the team. They wanted absolutely nothing to do with that, especially without Aaron Rodgers in the fold. And you look at the trade, look, they ended up trading for him to try to make things work in a desperate effort last season. But their number one is Garrett Wilson. He was not happy about this. He got less targets after the trade, and Adams ended up costing the Jets a 2025 third-round pick in the trade with the Raiders. And at the time, the Jets were 2-6, and they finished 5-12. So with Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, they won exactly 3 more games. And in 11 games with the Jets, he had 67 catches for 854 yards and 7 touchdowns. Still has production left into him. I think he can still help some teams. But Jets fan, J-Rob, what are your thoughts on this move from your team?
I mean, it was the right move. Ultimately, Davante Adams came to New York as a mercenary with Aaron Rodgers. And with Aaron Rodgers obviously not going to be the starting quarterback for the New York Jets anymore, it is in his best interest to leave. I could tell there was some friction when he arrived between him and Garrett Wilson. And I love Davante Adams. I think he's a phenomenal receiver, one of the best to ever do it. But Garrett Wilson is the Jets' future at the position. And the thing is, Garrett Wilson, the sad part about Garrett Wilson, D-Mac, is that he's not even scratched the surface of what type of season he can have just because he has not had the targets or the quarterback play to really untap the freak athlete and receiver that he really is. I think he's a bona fide top 10 wide receiver, and with an actual quarterback who can get him the football, definitely will elevate this Jets football team. Davante Adams, to me, I think there's only one real destination that makes sense. You bring him to the Los Angeles Chargers. Go give Justin Herbert the wide receiver he is desperately needed and see if he can really flourish like people think his potential can be. Because ultimately, Davante can follow Aaron Rodgers wherever he goes. But I'm going to be honest, Aaron Rodgers to me is not a needle mover to a Super Bowl anymore. And if Davante Adams still wants to play meaningful football, he needs to link up with one of these younger receivers. Like, could the Texans afford him? You got 2 receivers who are down with injuries or are going to be coming off knee injuries. Could the Texans go get a Davante Adams? I look at, young quarterback in Green Bay. Do you want to go back to Green Bay and play with Jordan Love? That could work. You can go over to, Brock Purdy might need a wide receiver. You just got rid of Deebo Samuel. So I just think there's destinations for Davante that could allow him to still play meaningful football and contend for a championship.
Like, he's still a 1,000-yard receiver, right? At the end of the day, is he elite? All-pro Davante Adams? No, but last year, a 75.8 PFF grade, 76.8 receiving grade, 85 catches on 135 targets, but 1,063 receiving yards, 8 receiving touchdowns. He's still going to have a market. I think all those teams you mentioned make a lot of sense. I'm going to come at it at the angle of which teams are crazy enough to consider the package deal with Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. First team I think makes the most sense is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. Here's why. They were crazy enough to take on the Russell Wilson experience. Justin Fields had some moments, but clearly Tomlin doesn't think he's going to be the guy. So is Aaron Rodgers an upgrade from Russell Wilson? The answer is yes. And then Davante Adams, would he be an upgrade for their receiving core? The answer is a major yes. George Pickens, solid. Not that Davante Adams type. Calvin Austin, he's not even a wide receiver too. So if you come into that organization, they're not going to mess around. You got to be on your best behavior. It's their culture. The Steelers have won Super Bowl after Super Bowl. You're not going to break that franchise. Will they be good enough to win or compete for a Super Bowl? Like you said, a Super Bowl needle mover. I'm not so sure that's the case, but I think there's some organizations in the National Football League that are just in a, hey, can we be kind of fun and see what happens? That is one of those teams. I think he could be their best option where they're at. They could be desperate enough to go that route. Next team, how about they stay in New York and you go with the Giants? Because like the Giants, the case for the Giants for me is the Giants met every single one of Matthew Stafford's trade demands. They were going to pay him $55 million. They were going to give up a pick. They were going to do everything they needed to do to get him into New York. So if you're looking for a veteran quarterback that has played at an elite level, Matthew Stafford is younger, 4 years younger than Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is still a veteran, and they're looking for not the long term, but the short term. So the Giants, you can have them for much cheaper than what it would have cost them to get Matthew Stafford. And then you got Adams, Malik Neighbors, Tracy. I mean, there is some potential with the offense there with the Giants. Think about the Giants. What do you think, J-Rob?
I mean, Aaron Rodgers wouldn't have to move out of his $1 million home that he bought in New Jersey. So I think travel-wise it'd be smart for him. Ultimately, with the Giants, I'm actually think they make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers in the package deal because with Davante, just like the Jets, they're screaming for success. Like, they are tired of all of this nonsense too. But the problem is for Giants fans is like, you just watch what happened in New York. So it's like you might have some trauma to bring that over to the Giants and expect a different result. But for Brian Daboll, how many options do you really have at the end of the day? Because
and they're just so irrelevant.
Yeah.
I mean, Saquon Barkley just signed a new deal, and the team within your division just won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not pretty for them either.
I mean, get some offensive line help. At the end of the day, I do think if you get Aaron Rodgers' offensive line, as much as I was not happy with his performance with the New York Jets, D-Mac, you get him an O-line, he can still sling it with the best of them.
I mean, like on a given day, I mean, he still has that ability. He's just, he's an above average quarterback. He really is. Now, third team, I just can't imagine this as far as just like the uniform on the player. Like, it wouldn't even look like a normal Photoshop jersey swap, but the Tennessee Titans have the first round pick. They got over $50 million in cap space. They have some intriguing young pieces there. And yes, you have the number one pick. You could draft Shedeur Sanders. You could draft Cam Ward. But if you don't think those guys are generational talents, you could trade down and you could get more picks. And then you can have Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams. And then you use those picks in the future. So there's some options there. And for me, it just comes down to Aaron Rodgers or Will Levis. I mean, that's a pretty easy call for me. I think those three teams are, I mean, look, it's probably unlikely. And I think that Davante Adams makes a lot of sense, as you point out, for some teams individually. But look, Aaron Rodgers, if he didn't have the reputation as far as just kind of being that guy who kind of ruffles some feathers and just the darkness retreats and just the things he says on Pat McAfee shows and things like that, he'd be viewed a little differently. It would be, oh, no, this is just a legend at the end of his career. Aaron Rodgers is a legend.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is the first ballot Hall of Famer. Let's not forget that. And he still has some skill left. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But